The year was 1865, and dusk drifted across Gallow Creek like drifting smoke from a dying fire. Clara Whitmore stepped off the wagon path and onto the frozen street, her breath, a pale ghost, rising into the chill. She had traveled many hard miles since the war ended, carrying with her the quiet strength of a woman who had tended the wounded while shells burst like thunder over torn earth. Yet Gallow Creek felt different from the battlefields she had survived. The silence here was not the stillness of peace, but the hush of a place holding its breath, as though the ground itself feared what might emerge from the gathering dark. The few townsfolk still outside moved with wary glances, whispering about missing cattle, strange tracks near the foothills, and the sheriff's prolonged disappearance. Clara kept moving, clutching the leather satchel of medicines against her side. A feverish child waited at the edge of town, and though the storm building over the ridge looked fierce enough to swallow the night, Clara would not ignore the plea of a desperate mother. Snow began to fall in tight spirals, swirling around the lantern above the saloon. Its flickering glow bent in the wind as though it, too, felt the tension gripping the streets. Clara slowed, only briefly, scanning the storm's shifting curtain. That was when she saw the riders, 3 figures, dark coats, wide hats, horses shuddering beneath layers of frost. They emerged without sound, moving with the confidence of men accustomed to danger. A single gunshot split the air. Chairs scraped behind doors, shutters slammed, horses screamed in panic. Clara dropped to her knees instinctively, her heart kicking like a wild animal. Another shot snapped against the blacksmith's awning, sending metal ringing through the cold. A wagon overturned near the well, scattering crates and snow. Then the outlaws appeared fully, pushing through the storm with guns drawn. Their leader stepped forward, tall and grim, his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. A jagged scar cut across his beard, a mark that drew Clara's eyes even as fear tightened her chest. She did not know him, yet something about the man struck her as unbearably human beneath the menace, as though sorrow clung to him like dust on old boots. Before she could run, an arm hooked around her, pulling her back against a body hard as dried leather. Cold, metal pressed into her ribs. "Don't move," a voice warned. The outlaw held her firmly, but not cruelly, his breath warming the back of her neck. Clara raised her hands slowly, trying to calm her pounding pulse. "Let the woman go," someone shouted from behind an overturned barrel. The scarred leader turned his head sharply. "You touch that trigger," he said, "and she falls before the snow does." Clara tried to keep her voice steady. "There's no need for this." The outlaw gripping her trembled, not from fear, she realized, but from something deeper, something that made his hold unsteady. She felt the erratic beat of his heart, the tension in his breath. He was not a man who enjoyed violence. He was a man pushed to the edge. Gunfire roared again at the far end of the street. The deputies had arrived at last, their shapes emerging from the swirling white. At their front was Sheriff Burton, his rifle raised, his expression carved from iron. "Cole," Burton said, voice low and carrying. "Release her." "Cole." So that was the leader's name. Clara felt him stiffen, felt the bitter exhale that escaped his throat. "You know why I'm here," he said. "You know what happened." "You butchered your own brother," Burton replied. "There's nothing more to speak about." Clara heard the sharp intake of breath near her ear. Pain, not anger. Cole's grip did not tighten. Instead it quivered, as though the accusation reopened a wound still bleeding beneath the surface. "Say his name," Cole snarled. "Tell this town what you did." Unease spread through the deputies. Boots shifted on frozen ground. A few men exchanged glances that betrayed doubt. Burton's jaw tensed, and Clara sensed the truth lingered somewhere between these 2 men, poisoned and heavy as stagnant water. "You're endangering an innocent woman," Burton said. "Stand down." Clara suddenly felt the storm's weight press around them, thick with the unspoken past. She could not see Cole's face, but she felt the despair radiating from him, a grief desperate enough to lead him into madness or martyrdom. "Listen to me," she whispered. "This can be settled without spilling more blood. You don't know this town, Cole muttered. You don't know what's buried here. Snow whipped through the standoff, coating rifles, coats, and shattered wagons. From windows, fearful eyes watched. The town seemed suspended between breaths, waiting for the moment everything would shatter. Clara understood, with sudden clarity, that the conflict gripping Gallow Creek ran far deeper than any outlaw raid. Cole was not here for plunder. He was here for truth, a truth the sheriff feared enough to hide behind gun barrels. The next move would decide everything. The deputies tightened their formation, but hesitation flickered across their faces. They looked not at Clara, nor even at Cole, but at Burton, as if silently questioning the orders that had shaped the town's fate for years. The sheriff's eyes narrowed, his rifle angling higher, and Clara sensed the moment slipping toward catastrophe. The wind surged, carrying with it the sharp scent of pine and iron. Clara stepped forward as far as Cole's grip allowed, raising her voice above the storm. If there is truth to speak, let it be spoken now. Let this town hear it plainly. Burton barked, silence. But Cole answered instead, his voice raw. My brother didn't die by my hand. He died because he uncovered something in Burton's ledgers, something the sheriff would kill to protect. Gasps rippled through the onlookers huddled behind doors. Clara felt Cole's anguish tremble through him, a man too haunted to fear the bullets aimed his way. Proof, Burton growled. You have none. I have his journal, Cole replied, hidden where your men won't find it. The sheriff's expression cracked, revealing panic beneath the mask. His rifle jerked slightly, and Clara sensed the final spark igniting. It was beginning. The first shot cracked through the storm like a hammer striking an anvil, and in that instant chaos erupted across the snow-packed street. Clara felt Cole wrench her backward, dragging her behind a toppled water trough as bullets whipped past in bright, vicious streaks. Deputies scattered for cover while townsfolk shrieked and ducked behind door frames, their lanterns trembling in quivering hands. Cole pressed her down, his breath ragged with urgency yet strikingly controlled. Stay low, he muttered. Burton's lost his senses. He'll fire on anything that moves. Clara steadied herself against the frozen trough, the stinging cold biting through her gloves. You're using me as a shield, she whispered, anger and fear warring within her. I'm trying to walk away from a gunfight, not crawl through one. Cole's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking toward the deputies regrouping at the far end of the street. If I'd wanted to hurt you, he said, I'd have done it before Burton arrived. You're alive, because you're not part of this town's rot. Snow swirled heavier, muting the distant shouts and bootfalls as Clara studied him more carefully. His coat bore the scars of hard travel, and his face, though fearsome, carried the ache of a man mourning something precious. Whatever truth he sought, it was worth risking death in a blizzard of gunfire. You mentioned a journal, Clara said. Your brother's. What did it reveal? Cole hesitated, and in that pause Clara sensed a shift. Not trust, not yet, but the faint crack of a guarded door. Burton's been skimming land rights, he said softly, stealing deeds, forcing families off their property. My brother found records buried in the county ledgers. He confronted Burton. 2 days later, he was dead. Clara's breath caught. Burton, the same sheriff who everyone claimed was the spine of Gallow Creek, now stood exposed as something far darker. She had watched men crumble under the weight of secrets during the war. But this was rot masquerading as righteousness. A bullet struck the trough, splintering wood inches from Clara's cheek. Cole pulled her up sharply. Move, he ordered. We can't stay pinned here. They dashed toward a wagon half buried in drifting snow. Clara's skirt snagged on a jagged plank, but Cole yanked her free, his strength undeniable even as blood trickled from a graze along his arm. You're hurt, Clara said, breathless as they crouched behind the wagon's wheel. Let me look. Later, Cole said, first we get out of town. Snow's getting worse. If Burton corners us now, neither of us will live to speak truth. Clara peeked over the wagon. Deputies pushed forward in a tense, angled formation. Burton barked orders, his rifle raised, his breath fogging the air like the snort of an enraged bull. "He's not just after you," Clara said. "He's after whatever threatens his control." Cole nodded. "Which is why you need to run the moment you can. I'll draw them off." Clara turned to him sharply. "I'm not leaving you in this. I may be a nurse, but I'm not helpless." A flicker of something, respect, maybe even gratitude, crossed Cole's face. "You've got grit," he murmured. "More than most in this place." They slipped along the back of the wagon, snow battering their coats. Clara's breath burned in her lungs as they pushed toward a narrow alleyway between the general store and the livery. There, shadow and drifting frost offered precious concealment. But as they slipped into the alley, a figure stepped from the gloom, revolver gleaming despite the swirling snow. Deputy Crane, Burton's most loyal hound. "End of the road, Cole," Crane snarled. "Sheriff says you're to come in cold or colder." Cole pushed Clara behind him. Crane's aim flicked toward her, and his grin sharpened. And the girl? Maybe she's seen too much. Clara's pulse hammered. The alley felt too narrow, the shadows too suffocating. Cole's stance shifted, preparing to lunge. "Crane," Clara said, forcing her voice steady. "You know Burton's lying. You've seen families vanish without explanation." Crane hesitated, just long enough. Cole struck. A blur of motion, a grunt, the crack of bone against brick. Crane collapsed, his gun skidding across the ice. Cole seized Clara's wrist. "Move," he shouted. They burst from the alley into an open field beyond the last row of buildings. Wind howled over the barren stretch, cutting through cloth and flesh with ruthless force. "Where is the journal?" Clara yelled. "Hidden in the foothills," Cole replied. "If we reach it, we expose Burton for what he is." Behind them, shouts rose, boots crunching over snow as deputies surged after them. Clara felt fear coil tight in her gut, but underneath it burned something fiercer, resolve. "Then we run," she said. They plunged into the storm together, two fugitives bound by necessity, by danger, and by the fragile, newfound trust forming between them with every breath of icy air. Snow blinded them, stinging their eyes and burning their cheeks, yet they kept moving, each step carving a path through the merciless white. Clara felt her muscles ache, her lungs strain, but she refused to falter. Cole stayed close, guiding her when the wind grew too fierce, steadying her when the drifts rose to her knees. Behind them, the town's gunfire faded into muted echoes, swallowed by the raging storm. Ahead, the foothills loomed like the spine of some ancient beast slumbering beneath winter's weight. Clara forced her legs onward, driven not only by the danger behind them, but by the gnawing need to uncover the truth Cole claimed to hold. "How much farther?" she gasped. "Up the ridge," Cole answered. "There's a cave. My brother used it as a lookout when he was tracking Burton's riders." Clara nodded, though every limb trembled. The storm clawed at them like a living thing, hungry for weakness. Cole glanced back, scanning the swirling void. "They're gaining," he warned. Clara clenched her teeth. "Then we can't stop," she said, her voice thin but unwavering. "Not now." Cole met her gaze, something like pride lighting his eyes despite the storm's fury. "You're stronger than you look," he said. Together they pressed on. Snow lashed across the mountainside as Clara and Cole pushed upward, their breaths torn away by the wind. The storm howled against the ridgeline, drowning all sound but the pounding of their boots and the distant shouts of the deputies fighting through the drifts below. Clara's legs burned, yet she forced herself onward, driven by something fiercer than fear. Cole's brother had died trying to reveal the truth, and Clara would not let that sacrifice vanish into the frozen dark. The cave stood ahead, its entrance a jagged shadow cut into the ridge. Cole motioned for silence, guiding Clara toward the opening with careful steps. Inside, the air grew still, the storm muffled to a distant roar behind them. Clara leaned against the wall, catching her breath as Cole crouched near a pile of loose stones. He moved them aside with steady hands until his fingers closed around a leather-bound journal wrapped in oilcloth. Clara felt a jolt of awe as he placed it into her palms. "This is what Burton fears," Cole said. "My brother recorded every deed he uncovered." Clara opened the first page and scanned the cramped handwriting. Names, dates, property lines, evidence so damning it made her stomach twist. Families had been stripped of everything they owned, all under the sheriff's authority. "This is enough to bring him to justice," she whispered. Cole nodded, though grief flickered behind his hardened stare. "My brother thought so too." Footsteps crunched at the cave's mouth. Cole grabbed Clara's arm and pulled her deeper into the shadows. Burton entered with 2 deputies, lantern held high, rifle already raised. His face was pale, with fury, the storm plastering snow against his coat. "You should have kept riding, Cole," Burton said. "Now you've dragged a stranger into a grave she never chose." Clara stepped forward, journal clutched tightly. "It's over, Sheriff," she said. "The truth lives here. You can't silence it." Burton's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand this town," he snarled. "Order requires sacrifice." A few broken families spared the rest from ruin. Cole stepped between them, his voice trembling with fury. "You murdered my brother to protect your lies." Burton's rifle snapped upward. "I rid the county of a traitor." Before the trigger fell, Cole lunged, knocking Clara aside as the shot cracked through the cavern. Stone shards blasted from the wall, showering Clara in dust. Cole tackled Burton, their bodies slamming into the cold earth. The deputies rushed forward, but Clara swung the lantern at the nearest one, the glass shattering as flames splashed across his coat. He staggered back, screaming, dropping his gun. Clara seized it, hands shaking but steady enough to keep them alive. Cole and Burton rolled across the cavern floor, fists hammering with raw desperation. Burton snarled like a cornered animal, clawing for his fallen rifle. Cole grabbed his wrist, twisting hard, the gun skittering across the ground. A deputy raised his revolver toward Cole. Clara fired. The bullet echoed like thunder, the deputy collapsing with a gasp that vanished into the storm's howl. Cole froze for half a breath, stunned by the ferocity he saw in Clara's eyes. She had saved him again, not out of obligation, but choice. Burton used the moment to lunge for the rifle. Cole slammed his shoulder into him, driving the sheriff back against the cavern wall. Snow whirled through the entrance, carrying voices of more deputies climbing the ridge. Clara shoved the journal into her satchel and moved toward the exit. "We have to go," she said. "Now!" Burton broke free of Cole's grip and swung wildly, catching Cole across the jaw. He stumbled, blood streaking his lip. Clara fired a warning shot into the ground between them. Burton snarled but froze, chest heaving with cold, murderous rage. Cole wiped his mouth, eyes burning. "End this," Clara said, her voice low but unshaken. "If he walks out, he'll hunt us forever. But if he falls here—" Cole stared at Burton, torn between vengeance and the man he refused to become. "My brother deserves justice," Cole whispered. "Not another murder." Burton lunged again, but Clara stepped between them, gun aimed straight at his chest. "Don't," she warned. Burton hesitated. Only a breath, but long enough for Cole to wrench him backward, pinning him to the ground. Voices outside grew louder. Deputies were nearly upon them. Clara shoved snow into the lantern flame, extinguishing their last source of light. "We can't fight a whole posse," she said. "We take him with us." Burton thrashed, but Cole's strength held firm. They half dragged, half pulled him out into the storm, the wind screaming around them as if the night itself resisted their escape. Torches flickered below, deputies climbing fast. Cole dragged Burton to the ridge's edge, where a narrow path wound down the mountain. "Move," Cole ordered, shoving Burton ahead. They descended through waist-high drifts, Clara slipping more than once, Cole steadying her even as he kept Burton from breaking free. Gunfire cracked behind them, bullets slicing through the storm. Snow exploded at their feet. Cole pushed Clara behind a boulder. "Stay down," he said. "No heroics this time." Burton spat blood into the snow. "You think dragging me down a mountain changes anything? That journal dies with you." Clara met his glare. "No," she said. "It lives with the people you try to bury." Cole fired a single warning shot, scattering the deputies long enough for them to continue downward. At the base of the ridge, The storm softened just enough to reveal the dark line of the frozen creek. If they crossed it, the canyon beyond would shield them until sunrise. Clara felt hope spark through her exhaustion. But Burton twisted violently, shoving Cole backward into the snow. He sprinted toward the deputies, screaming for them to fire. Clara raised her gun, breath trembling. If Burton reached them, everything would be lost. Cole rose, stumbling but unbroken, and tackled Burton at the creek's bank. They crashed through the frozen crust, plunging waist-deep into icy water. Clara rushed forward, grabbing Cole's arm as Burton swung again, desperate and wild. She struck Burton across the jaw with the pistol's handle, sending him sprawling. Deputies crested the hill. Cole seized Clara's hand. "Run!" Together, they fled into the canyon shadows as the storm swallowed their footprints, the journal safe Burton defeated, and the dawn of truth waiting somewhere beyond the frozen dark.